Good evening and welcome to the planning meeting. It is now 6 o'clock and I would like to start the meeting. My name is Mike Fletcher and I will be chairing this meeting tonight. I'd like to remind everybody present that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded for publication on the Council's website. There are no planned fire alarms this evening, so in the case of an emergency, please evacuate the building using the nearest available exit and congregate at the assembly point just outside the college, so across the road there. Right, item 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence. So we've received apologies from Steve Taylor and Councillor Jones. John Fox is substituting for Roy tonight. Have we had any further apologies? Actually, Carly, Srikanth, Councillor Panjala has sent his apologies, his late apologies. He will be here, but he's still trying to get here. Right, so item 2 on the agenda, minutes from the last meeting. I move that the minutes of the Planning Committee held on 14th of October 2025 be approved as a correct record. Are there any comments on the accuracy of the minutes? Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. Just something little on page 5, next to apologies, it says Councillors Jackie Main and Srikanth Panjala, but hasn't got my name, so could you add that, please?
Absolutely. Carly, have you got a note of that? Thank you. Thanks, Darren. Anybody else got any comments on the last set of minutes? So, may I move that they are... Oh, sorry, Russell, did you want to? So may I move that they're an accurate record? Agreed? With that one exception. Okay, thank you. Item 3, items of urgent business. You'll be pleased to know I have not agreed to any items of urgent business tonight. Item 4, declarations of interest. So does anybody have any declarations of interest to make regarding the 2 items coming up tonight? No? Great, thank you. And item 5, declarations of receipts. Does anybody have any declarations of correspondence, meetings, discussions held that are relevant to the determination of any planning application that we're reviewing tonight? No? You've all been monks, basically. Excellent. Or nuns. Right, item 6 on the agenda then is planning appeals, and may I ask Jonathan to bring us up to date?
Thank you, Chair. It's been another good month in terms of planning decisions for the appeals. We've had a couple of decisions which were design-related reasons for refusal, and they were dismissed, so it's good to see that the officers are being supported in decisions they make about design. But overall, it's been a good month, and we've added an overall total to the box for this meeting, and that shows 20% over the whole of the year so far, which is well within what we were looking for.
Any questions for Jonathan? No? Jonathan, I've got one. I won't spring it on you tonight. It's one I've alluded to before. It'd be really quite useful, I think, if you could have a think about for the next meeting, giving us an idea of, is there any pattern to those kind of appeal, what kind of cases are getting appealed, and particularly those that are actually succeeding. I know they're a minority, but is there any pattern that we can read into that? Thank you. Right, so if there are no other questions? Right, you've had your chance. Item 7 is Grays Park Centre and former Adult Community College, Richmond Road. And may I ask David Stewart to present David isn't here, is he? Right, so for tonight, the part of David Stewart is being played by Jonathan. Off you go.
Thank you, Chair. So the application before you tonight seeks the redevelopment of the site for a care home with 86 bedrooms and 8 properties, residential properties. So the application site lies to the west of Richmond Road and was previously occupied by the Thurrock Adult Community College. So the site plan on the screen shows the location of the site. It's a roughly L-shaped building with Bridge Road on your left and Richmond Road on the right. And this is an aerial photo which shows the site once the buildings on the site have been demolished, so it's a couple of years old. And you can see, again, Bridge Road on the left and Richmond Road on the right. We've got a few photos from the site. So the top left, or the one on the left, is looking west into the front of the site from Richmond Road. The second picture is looking southwest within the site towards Bridge Road. And these pictures are taken from outside the site. So the picture on the left is looking south down Richmond Road with the site entrance on the right-hand side. And the second picture is looking north along Richmond Road with the site on the left. So this is the site plan in front of you. I've turned it round so it fits better on the slide, but the north elevation is on the right-hand side. So the care home building is effectively a J-shaped building to the left of the picture. To the left of the building, within the kind of J shape, is a private garden. There's 29 parking spaces provided for the care home building in the middle of the site. And then to the east, we've got a terrace of 4 properties and 2 terraces of 2 properties, and those are private residential properties. And there are 16 parking spaces for those units. So the proposed care home would be 2 stories along the frontage of Richmond Road, raising to 3 stories along the back where it faces Bridge Road to the back, and the properties along this side of the site are also 3 stories. So we've got a floor plan from the ground floor, just as an example of the building. All the green rooms are private rooms, and the grey rooms and blue rooms are sort of shared communal rooms. And on the ground floor, for example, we have a cafe, there's a dining room, lounges, and a cinema room for the residents. So this is an elevation of the scheme. So on the top slide, it's looking from Richmond Road, so you can see the care home is 2 stories where it's closer to Richmond Road, rising to 3 stories towards the back where it faces onto Bridge Road. And to the right-hand side of the slide, you've got the residential properties, so the terrace and semi-detached properties. Again, they're sort of 2.5, 3-story residential properties. And the slide on the bottom is an enlarged version of the smaller part of the care home. This is an elevation, so this would be looking at the back from Bridge Road, so you can see the level, so it only appears just over sort of 2 stories from the Bridge Road side, and the plan on the bottom is looking south within the site, looking at the care home, and the area where the cursor is, that's the main entrance to the building. And that's another sort of expanded view showing the southern part of the site. And these are the terraced houses, so terrace of 4 properties with accommodation over 3 floors. And again, the semi-detached houses, similar design with accommodation over 3 floors. So the site lies within one of the main urban areas in the borough where residential development of this type should be located. The provision of an 86-bed care home and 8 houses in a sustainable location within close proximity to the town centre would make effective use of this land. There is a recognised need for elderly persons accommodation and dementia accommodation within the borough and wider areas, and this development would provide for that need. With regards to general housing provision, the council cannot demonstrate an up-to-date 5-year housing supply, and the new dwellings would be beneficial in this regard. The site, as shown on the plans, has been carefully designed to step the highest part of the building away from the main street scene and other nearby properties. The site is well located in an urban area with an easy walking distance to the town centre and local amenities for visitors. The level of parking provision is on balance considered to be acceptable, and some of the conditions relating to parking include the submission of a travel plan and EV charging facilities. Other matters of detail are also considered acceptable, and appropriate conditions are attached to the report, and approval is recommended.
Thanks, Jonathan. Obviously, we'll come back to Jonathan in a few minutes, but first of all, we have a statement of support from Katie Eaton, who I believe is the applicant. So if you'd like to come and join us, Katie. I don't know if you've used that before, but it's the button on the right that turns it on. That's if it does turn on. What we'll do is we'll give you 3 minutes usually comes up on the screen, but we'll give you 3 minutes to present your case, and then, if you don't mind, we'll ask the committee if they've got any factual questions for you. So, in your own time.
Good evening, Chair and members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Katie Eaton from Sphere 25 Planning Consultancy, speaking as the agent on behalf of the applicant. The site before you has been vacant since the former college was demolished in 2021. It is just 750 metres from Grays railway station and within easy reach of the town centre, therefore a highly sustainable location for redevelopment. The proposal, designed by award-winning architect Vestar, seeks permission for an 86-bedroom care home and 8 family houses, together with landscaping, parking and internal roads. The care home will sit south of the site, mainly 2 stories in height, with a 3-storey element which has been designed to take advantage of the site's natural topography. The U-shaped layout centres around a secure garden which benefits from a high-quality and specialised landscaping design. In the northern section of the site, 8 family dwelling houses are proposed. This includes 4 3-bedroom terrace dwellings and 4 4-bedroom semi-detached dwellings, each set across 3 floors and afforded a private rear garden. The applicant team has worked closely with the case officer throughout the process through pre-application discussions and a PPA to respond to design comments. With the benefit of this advice, the scheme has been designed to the highest quality, using carefully selected materials which reflect the local character of the surroundings. The proposal includes a logical and safe internal road layout with access from Richmond Road, as well as an additional pedestrian and cycle connection to Bridge Road, promoting sustainable travel and permeability through the site. The internal road configuration and parking provision have been agreed with the Planning Authority and Highways Department. With regard to the need for the care home, the Council's care market development strategy strongly suggests that there is a growing need for additional care home space. The applicant's independently commissioned demand assessment demonstrates an unmet need for 280 bed spaces in the borough, which is set to increase by 2030. The scheme will provide significant benefits to the borough and the local area, including, but not limited to, the provision of much-needed family dwellings and care home bed spaces to help to address Thurrock Council's housing need and housing land supply, the provision of 70 full-time equivalent jobs during the care home's operation and a large number of jobs during the construction phase, improved pedestrian access through the site, and significant improvements to the site's appearance and natural surveillance, helping to prevent crime. In summary, the proposal before you would bring a sustainably located, vacant brownfield site into efficient use. It would respond to well-established local needs and deliver clear social and economic benefits for Grays. We respectfully ask members to support the application this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Before we let Katie go, do any of the members have any questions of a factual nature for her? Councillor Cherry.
Good evening. With the terrace houses, is there going to be any rear access to the gardens? Because what concerns me about terrace properties is, do they have to bring everything through the front of the house to get into the back garden, for landscaping materials, bicycles, that sort of thing? Is there any rear access?
So each of the dwellings has a private rear access, so they can, you'll be able to see on the site plan, they've got, it's been designed essentially so that the end terraced gardens are slightly shorter, so that the middle ones can be afforded access down the rear.
Thanks, Russell. Anybody else? No? Thank you, Katie. You may return to your seat. And we now move on to any questions that you have for Jonathan. Do you have any questions for Jonathan? Tom, Councillor Kelly.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. John, it doesn't look like there's too much outdoor amenity space. I suppose ideally with residential care homes, you'd probably want somewhere for the residents to be able to go. in the local area. Graystown Park, I'd imagine it's quite difficult to get to. I know it's right next door, but for an elderly person, it's quite elevated, hills, up and down. So is it normal for care facilities not really to have too much outdoor space? And obviously there is a little bit of greenery there. So is that what that part's for? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question. There we go. So yeah, there is a communal garden sort of within the enclosed area to the southern part of the site on the left here. There is a sort of landscaped area all around the site. So there is sort of satisfactory open space for the residents to use. So I think given the nature, as I understand it, of the residents, that would be enough for their needs on a day-to-day basis, yeah. And just clarifying the question from Councillor Cherry with regards to the terrace properties. So you can see the terrace of 4, there's an access, the grey dotted area is a path which serves the property on the second from the left. There's another path which serves the property second from the right, and the semi-detached properties would all have access through their sort of shared drive areas.
Thank you. Councillor Green.
Thank you.
Sorry, actually, Tom, did you want to come back on that at all? I should have asked. Right. Sorry, Aaron, on you go.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the matter of car parking, it says here that we're 7 to 12 staff spaces short and there's no visitor parking. With Richmond Road already at capacity and already struggling, what is our thoughts on that? And I presume Julian's going to take that.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, there are shift work patterns, so not everybody will be the need for parking at the same time. To ensure that what the parking requirement that they provided was adequate, what we got them to do was provide some evidence from their other equivalent sites to this site, which showed, in fact, that less than 29 parking spaces were utilised at those facilities. As you're aware, there's residents parking in Richmond Road, so there's and Bridge Road has limited parking as well. So there's no opportunity in the area for staff to actually park. So if they need to park, they'll have to park in a council car park, and if there is not spare capacity, they'll have to park in a public car park and walk. It's not that far to the Darning Road car park from the site if they need to.
You want to ask a follow-up question?
Yes, please. Just on the access road, again, Richmond Road and those roads in that area are actually quite tight. Have we looked at another possible access road into that site?
No, we haven't, but we've obviously mentioned that there may need to. I mean, I think the current access has got waiting restrictions around it, from my recollection, to enable access to the old education centre. We will be doing the same. We will be putting probably junction protection restrictions as part of the 278 application to ensure there's access to the facility. I know what you're talking about because I go to the Alf Loan Centre and I know how tight it can be there, but sometimes the residents will park across the access. But in this respect, as part of the 278, we'll introduce some waiting restrictions as was previously there for the adult education to enable easy access.
Yeah, good. Thanks. Tom, did you want to come back in with a further question?
Well, it was really just it was on parking. I think Aaron covered most of it. I mean, there's a lot of care homes here and not many visitor spaces. I mean, I think this is going to be one of those schemes where I don't particularly like it on the basis of the parking and the amenity space, but look, ultimately it would appear that our parking standards in Thurrock are just simply not that good, and that's I think across the nation. I mean, where would because obviously it's going to be very busy in terms of families wanting to visit to see their elderly parents. How many spaces are we looking at compared to how many residential care homes there are? Thank you.
Chair, thank you. I'll answer the question about the set parking standards. They were done as part of parking surveys within Thurrock. So the basis for those is on factual basis of parking need. In respect to the parking, as I indicated, the parking was surveyed at other sites in of equivalent size, and not all the spaces. In fact, this has got more spaces than some of the sites that were surveyed. In addition, there are limited waiting bays on Bridge Road. So if there's an extra need for visitor parking, then they potentially can park there, as there is an access down from Bridge Road into the facility.
I'm going to ask a stupid question on the back of Tom's. They've compared the parking with other similar. We're talking about the same number of patients. We're talking about, how similar is similar.
It's from my recollection, because I don't have the data in front of me, they were of a similar size. Yeah, and as I said, in fact, that at the other facilities, the parking was actually, there was less parking at the sites than being provided at this site. So this site is providing more space than their other sites.
Thanks, Julian. Just before I move back onto you, Aaron. No, you're okay, Tom. Aaron?
Sorry, Chair. I just want to raise, there's been some, let's say, I don't know how to put it, that there's been no mention of historic covenant on this site that can only be used for education. By the looks of it, Jonathan knows the answer.
Yeah, so the covenant, I was aware that that might be raised, and I'd seen some sort of publicity on that one. So the covenant would be a legal matter which is outside the planning decision-making process. So we could potentially grant permission for it, or you could grant permission for it tonight, and it would be the applicant who would need to look at removing that covenant on land. So it's something outside of the planning process, and it shouldn't affect how you make a recommendation on the application tonight.
Dan?
Just to add to the information that Jonathan just set out, that's correct, and it will be a relevant consideration for a application to remove a covenant, whether there is a planning permission or the planning situation. So it's very much a matter for the upper tribunal under what's called a Section 84, subsection 1 application, but not here.
Okay, thanks, gents. Russell?
In relation to the covenant, education purposes, is there any 106 money or capacity to help the Scout Centre with any kind of improvements that could come under education?
No, through the application process, there isn't a requirement, or there couldn't be a requirement to fund that, unfortunately. So, no, there isn't. Short answer.
Chair, maybe it could be a voluntary thing from the developer to liaise with the Scout Centre and to provide some assistance if they need anything, especially repairs to the building or something like that.
We wouldn't be able to put that, unfortunately, on as a condition or legal agreement. The applicant is here tonight, so they will have heard. So that will probably be something they can take away and think about if they wanted to do that on a voluntary basis.
Jonathan, I mean, I do apologise if I'm asking, and everybody actually knows the answer. Is it worth just very quickly explaining why there isn't a 106 application, or that this application wouldn't draw that kind of 106 contribution?
Yeah, as part of the application process, we consulted with the relevant consultees. There was no, because of the nature of the development for a care home rather than residential properties, there was no need for things like education contribution or affordable housing like you would see on a scheme of traditional residential properties. So from those consultation responses, there was nothing that was considered to be viable as a Section 106 contribution.
Thank you. I don't know if that helped, but... Oh, Dan, on you go.
Yeah, sorry, it might assist just to add to that, that if a planning obligation, so under Section 106 or a condition is not, there's various tests, one of which it must be necessary in planning terms. If there's no need for it in those circumstances, as a matter of law, the applicant could later go to make an application or ask an inspector to set aside that obligation. So it's not simply if you're not asked for it, you can't get it. It's that if you then include it in the permission, they can make an application to get it removed. So it's not simply a matter of sort of fact, it's also a matter of law.
Thanks, Dan. Does that make any of it any clearer? Lovely. Kathy.
Thank you. I mean, I think it is covered, but have we looked fully at the possible impact on local health services, given obviously the nature of the residents?
Yeah, there is a section on the response from the Primary Care Trust. The case officer assessed that sort of in detail and found that the request that had been put forward from the Primary Care Trust wasn't justifiable in terms of planning legislation, so we couldn't require that planning contribution at this time.
Yeah, I mean, accept that. But I think that it depends where residents come from. If they tend to be local, I suppose they'll have their existing GPs and things, so it wouldn't. But if we saw people coming from outside, it may have an impact.
And I think from the evidence or the information in the application, it suggested that for this type of use, most residents would usually come from within the borough, so they would probably be using the local healthcare facilities anyway, so it wouldn't necessarily be new pressure on the healthcare facilities. Potentially the 8 units might attract new families who weren't in the area, but generally speaking, in terms of the main bulk of the residents, there'd probably be local residents anyway.
Thanks, both. John.
Thank you, Chair. Just going back onto parking again, your calculations that you've said, does that take into account shift changeovers when there's a half hour before, half hour after, where you could have double the number of staff cars on site?
The parking levels that were provided were maximum parking within the car parks. So that includes potential shift changes. But as I've indicated, there is nowhere else to park other than in the park. And I understand what you say, but if you compare it to the other sites that they've highlighted, there is actually more parking here than on those sites. So there's that sort of extra capacity here, potentially.
Okay. Okay, John. Srikanth, good to see you. I'm afraid we can't bring you in until the next item because we'd already started, so I hope you don't mind. Anybody else got any questions? So, shall we move on to the discussion, the debate side? Thanks, by the way, folks. So, who would like to lead us off? Steve, Councillor.
Thanks, Chair. Just to support what Julian is saying, I'm a regular visitor at Whitecroft Care Home, and I was surprised how low the number of cars parked were, somewhere between sort of 4 and 7, and really, really low. You know, they don't get that many visitors, so I'm not surprised.
Thanks, Steve. Any further comments? Kathy, and then Tom.
Okay, thank you. I'd just say about parking, as far as I understand, and from my experience as well, visitors are permitted throughout the day, 24 hours a day. So you wouldn't get everyone visiting at the same time. So I think that might have some impact on. You don't need quite as much parking as you might think. So That's all I'd like to say. But otherwise, I think it's a great scheme and it's something definitely needed.
Russell, we'll bring you in after Tom. I think you're next.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So, yeah, look, ultimately, care homes are really needed. So, in that sense, it is a good scheme. I do have a different opinion on the parking. I think our standards in this country are incredibly poor. And just because it's done on a survey or it's on a bit of paper that's been agreed with doesn't mean that's the reality of what it is to have a care home in this particular facility. It's notoriously bad to access or hard to. There's a resident parking scheme. Why is there a resident parking scheme? Well, it's like a nightmare with the parking. So the reality is it's not ideal, and I do think it's going to cause some issues for residents in the local area. Having said that, this is planning. If the boxes have been ticked and they are in line with legal surveys, I think that makes it difficult to reject. The other concern is the amenity space. I think really with care homes, you want your residents to be able to go outside and access open space. Graystown Park is nice, but it's not easy to get to for elderly people at this location, and there's very little amenity space on this particular site. But I can't reject the scheme on those grounds. So it's one of these schemes that's it's okay. I do think it's going to cause some issues in the local area, but ultimately it's almost like I'll reluctantly approve. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Russell.
Thank you, Chair. Regards to parking, I can't see it being a massive issue because not everyone's going to be, staff-wise, going to be arriving by car. There's buses, there's cycles, electric scooter things that people buzz around on these days, which don't take up a lot of room. But if you might be able to help me out, there is parking further down Bridge Road at Charles Street, which is a council car park from memory, by the old Bricklayers Arms pub, when it used to be a pub. Is that purely for anybody to park, or is that residents only parking in that particular car park, Charles Street Junction, Bridge Road?
Thanks, guys. I think you might have mentioned the car park, Julie, the council park. Was that the one you meant?
No, I said the Darnley Road car park. I'm not 100% sure. It did used to be somewhat of a free-for-all at one stage because there were council employees parking in the car park as well. But I believe there is some order or something on the car park preventing certain people from using it.
It may be worth researching then, because I understand the people who originally bought the Bricklayers pub thought they were buying the car park, and hence that's not been developed. But I understood it was a council car park, and it may well be that anyone can park, whether or not they have to pay a fee to park. Could be researched.
Just had a quick look on the council's website. It's not listed as a council off-street car park, so it's not one of our official car parks on the website.
Thanks, folks. I guess, as Tom's pointed out, concerns we have around the parking, we won't really know how big an issue it is until this facility is built. What we are hearing is that compared with other facilities built by the same organisation, this is as much parking as they put in anywhere, and they're telling us that generally speaking, it's enough. In fact, I say generally speaking, they're telling us that it doesn't actually get fully used. Is that fair?
That's right. And I would add, we also looked at the local Bluebell Court development, which is a very similar site. It's got housing, residential and a care home, and the parking spaces are not utilised all the time. So that sort of clarifies what the applicant had put forward.
Thanks, Julian. It's perhaps a comment on modern society that there aren't more parking spaces filled up for visitors, for the people that are in there, but that's a whole other conversation. But it does sound like, yes, if that car parking space were to be an overflow would be difficult to accommodate, but we're saying that the chances of that happening are apparently not great.
No, I mean, it's a very sustainable site. You can, as has been mentioned by Councillor Cherry, you can walk there, you can come by bus. which is very close to the train station, so the likelihood a number of staff will be using alternative means of transport, and that's shown at the other sites. I suspect that they're not all car users. And I go past Whitecroft, for instance, and I've seen people get off the bus, obviously staff, and walk to the facility. You know, so I think it's a very sustainable location, and the likelihood is that the parking levels that they've shown will probably be somewhere around the level that they are.
Thanks, Julian. Steve, I want to come to you a second because you mentioned Whitecroft. You visit there quite a lot. So we've talked about the car parking. In terms of the open space, the amenity space, how does this compare with what Whitecroft offers? You know, just trying to get an idea of context.
Thanks, Chair, because, you know, the residents don't actually go out very, very much, especially in the cold weather. But yeah, it's sort of quite similar. Going to be enough space. Of course, the residents don't own cars either, so you're really only talking about the visitors. You go outside, maybe sit in the sun for half an hour or an hour. The visits aren't very long, you know, just enough to say hello, make sure they're okay, and then disappear again.
Thanks, Steve. So if I could summarise, I don't know if anybody else wants to say something before I get on my summarising routine. It seems that we're agreed in terms of the need for a facility like this. Our concerns are, I guess, twofold. One is around, is the parking enough? And I think the officers has done all they can really to reassure us on that. The other is whether there is enough green space and sort of open space for the people who are going to be living here to walk around in. I think in both cases you could say yes, there could be more, but as Tom's already pointed out, I don't think that either of those concerns is, I mean, I guess, are they addressable via conditions potentially, or given that we actually meet in the car park terms, we meet the minimum, so I'm assuming that we can't really put any conditions there. But in terms of amenity space, where do we stand?
So certainly in terms of parking, the application addresses what it needs to. So you can't add any conditions, and I certainly wouldn't advise any informatives. I mean, again, in terms of amenity space, I mean, the application is in front of you. So, I mean, the assessment is that it's acceptable in terms of the provision that's required. So I wouldn't advise any conditions with respect to additional amenity space. You've got to effectively assess what's in front of you, which the officer advises that it is acceptable.
Thanks, Ash. So, yeah, I think I agree with Tom that it'd be nice to see a bit more green space around there, but whether that's a reason not to give it the green light, personally, I don't think so. I will be voting in favour of this application personally. Now, are we in a position to go to that vote? Right, so let me read you the recommendation. So the recommendation is that the Chief Planning Officer be authorised to grant permission for the development subject to those conditions set out in section 16 of the report. And we haven't proposed any further conditions. So do I have a proposer for that motion? Steve? Is that a hand up or do you have toothache? Okay. And may I have a seconder? Jackie? It's a bit like being an auctioneer here. I have to intervene. Is that a nod? Is that a bid? Right. So proposed by Steve, seconded by Jackie. Shall we go to the vote? All those in favour? That's all right. Shrikant, you can sit this one out, mate. Thank you, folks. That's unanimous. So the recommendation has been approved. Thank you. Right. me get my papers in the right place. Right, so item 8 on the agenda is land and garages to the rear of 20 to 24 and 34 to 44 Anton Road, South Ockenden. And Nina, I believe it's yourself to present the report. So, after you.
Good evening, Chair and members. This application is to be determined at Planning Committee as this is a Thurrock Council application for housing. The scheme consists of 7 100% affordable dwellings, including parking. Before I begin the presentation, I'd like to raise a couple of points of housekeeping. This application is listed as item 8 on the Planning Committee agenda. However, an incorrect application number is listed. It should read 24/00173/TBC. Instead, it currently reads 24/00172/TBC. And lastly, it is requested that delegated authority be granted with regards to the final wording of condition number 7 that's been included. This relates to the single garage which is to be retained at the site. The Council's housing team are currently in discussions with the owner of this garage whereby the final wording of this condition is being considered. This application site is at Anton Road in South Ockenden and located to the rear of house numbers 20 to 52, which are sited to the east side of the road. The site is close to the south end of Anton Road at the junction with Aristale Avenue and is a one-way road running from south to north. The site itself is accessed via a side road, also part of Anton Road, which leads to the council-owned former garage site. As you can see from this slide, the site is within a predominantly residential area with some industrial units located to the northeastern corner. The north of the site comprises an enclosed area of green and previously undeveloped land, also owned by the council. This section of land has been included within the application site as it would become inaccessible and therefore unmanageable as a result of the proposed development. This area has been assessed in terms of both its ecological and wildlife value. Surveys established that the development of this area would not compromise any species of wildlife or trees, and historically this section of land, along with the wider garage site, has been subject to fly tipping. This slide shows the existing site layout, which provides a flat, hard-surfaced area used for informal parking by nearby residents. 14 garages currently remain on the site, isolated to the northwestern corner, as denoted by the blue boxes on this plan. All of the garages are to be demolished, apart from one, which is to be retained, as it is privately owned. However, the garage itself will be repaired rather than be rebuilt once the attached garages are demolished. Current images of the site can be seen here, with existing properties along the access road visible in the top right image, and existing garages visible in the bottom left image. The drawing on this slide shows the proposed site layout with the 2-bed pair of semis located at the south of the site, the 3-bed terrace running along the north of the site, and the 1-bed bungalow situated along the western boundary. As you can see from the accommodation schedule and coloured arrows denoting each property type. The blue arrow highlights the location of the retained garage with an image of that garage on the top left as it currently appears on site. 20 parking spaces would be provided across the site in total, with 11 required for the development itself. The remainder would be available for visitors and existing residents. The floor plans and elevations for the 1-bedroom bungalow can be seen here. The property would provide a wheelchair-accessible dwelling for up to 2 occupants, with a designated parking space directly outside. The private garden would be accessible by openings leading from the open-planned living area and bedroom. Floor plans and front elevations for the semi-detached pair can be seen on this slide, providing 2 double bedrooms to the first floor. And floor plans and typical front elevations of the 3-bed terrace dwellings can be seen here, with 2 double bedrooms and 1 single bedroom to the first floor. It is relevant to highlight that another council scheme for the redevelopment of a further former garage site, also at Anton Road, has recently been approved at Planning Committee, which members may recall. The proposed elevations for this development can be seen on the right side of this slide, with images on the left of nearby developments along and around Aristale Avenue, which is located to the east of the application site. This slide shows computer-generated images of the proposed dwellings, including how the semi-detached pair at the south of the site would integrate with the existing adjacent terrace, being constructed using a contemporary material palette while still utilising traditional bricks and tile formation. An image of the terraced dwellings can also be seen, along with an example of the brickwork to be used and detailed feature around each of the entrance doors. Examples of various types of surfacing materials can be seen here, along with a landscaping plan denoted by the green areas for the planted and soft areas. In addition, each of the 3 property types would benefit from solar panels to the roof. This slide demonstrates the accessibility of refuse trucks and how they would manoeuvre around the site. Refuse bin collection points are also denoted on this drawing. These images highlight the informal parking that currently takes place along the grass verge on the north side of the access road, which would be removed to provide parallel parking bays as part of the proposed development. The pedestrian walkway leading onto Aristale Close to the east can be seen here and would be retained post-completion, aiding permeability between developments. This slide shows a 3D computer-generated image again of the site. Surrounding built form is also visible and demonstrates that the proposed development would suitably integrate with its surroundings without appearing as being overdeveloped. So to summarise, the principle of this development is acceptable given the residential nature of the area. The number of dwellings and types proposed would be acceptable. They would comply with nationally described space standards and would be acceptable in terms of amenity impacts upon existing residential neighbours. With regards to highway matters, the parking provision would be adequate, as would the refuse and cycle storage provisions. Therefore, the proposed development is considered appropriate for its setting in terms of detailed design and character impact, and is recommended for approval subject to the conditions set out on page 78. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Nina, and I'm sure there will be, but first we will have a statement from Mark Bagley, and just for the eradication of doubt, Mark is speaking on behalf of the council, but it's another council department, it's housing, who are the applicant, just in case anybody wishes to be that to be clarified. Okay, Mark, we'll give you 3 minutes to read your statement, and basically in your own time. After that, we'll ask the panel if they've got any factual questions for you.
Okay, my name is Mark Bagley. I'm acting as the architect for the proposal submitted by the applicant Thurrock Council. I'd like to thank the Chair for this opportunity to speak and the officers for the committee report. The development proposes 7 high-quality houses for affordable rent, including 6 family homes and one bed wheelchair-accessible bungalow. The design has been informed and refined by advice received from the local planning authority and other consultees as part of the pre-application process, as well as engagement with local residents and ward members in a community consultation event. The comments received from this engagement have fed directly into the scheme. For example, the car park provision exceeds that required by policy, and the site layout was changed to allow full access to the rear gardens and garage of neighbouring residents. Pedestrian connectivity was also improved and the site's visual quality enhanced through new landscaping and tree planting. The site layout and massing minimises the impact on neighbouring properties. Reasonable distances are maintained to limit overlooking. The results of the sunlight and daylight tests indicate a very high level of sunlight and daylight retained by the neighbouring properties. There are no specific noise mitigating measures required. Proposals will provide 7 new parking spaces laid out along the existing access road into the site for local residents' use. Within the site, 13 new spaces are provided. 11 spaces for the 7 new dwellings, at 1.5 spaces per dwelling, is in accordance with the current Thurrock parking standards. The remaining 9 are for visitors and local residents. In total, the proposed development adds 20 unallocated car parking spaces for everyone to use, which one is a blue badge. 7 active dwelling associated EV charging points will be installed, along with 1 active visitor charging point. Cycle stores are located to the rear of all dwellings. The trips made by any mode of transport as a result of the development, including the car, are not anticipated to cause a significant impact on any of the local transport networks. The development will provide much needed high quality homes for council rent at a scale and character which fits in with the local context, and will have no adverse impact on privacy, amenity or local transport. It will provide new Thurrock homes for Thurrock people, built to high standards and incorporating sustainable features such as a fabric-first approach to the building's envelope and air source heat pumps for space heating. I therefore respectfully request that the application be approved in accordance with the officer's recommendation. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Right. Members of the committee, do you have any questions of a factual nature for Mark before we let him go? Russell.
Thank you, Mark. It seems a very good scheme. It's on Brownfield, and we desperately need more housing. The only thing that concerns me is the heat pumps. Obviously, the residents won't have any choice how to heat the homes. It's going to be a heat pump. Do we have any other council properties with heat pumps already, and any evidence of how good they are? Because I hear sometimes they're not that good and they can be quite expensive to run.
I'll just hand over to Keith.
Okay, yes, Keith Andrews. I'm the Head of Housing Development for Thurrock Council, so more than a design question. We do have other planning permissions with heat pumps. We are no longer making any applications or designs without them. I do understand that there are concerns about the operation of heat pumps, but we're working towards, as part of our sustainability plans, to move away from any gas requirements, and that's essential. So at the moment, there are heat pumps provided as part of the larger schemes down in Chadwell, and they were ground source rather than air source. But I've no sort of adverse commentary that's come back from that. We do know that they take some while for the residents to get used to having that general overall heating level rather than bursts of hot and cooler. So that's the best probably answer that I can give you, Councillor.
Thanks, Russell. Thanks, gents. Jackie.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Mark. With the solar panels, is there going to be any like mesh installation on the solar panels to obviously prevent the pigeon-proof it, essentially, is what I'm saying?
I think that's something we can certainly incorporate into the design, and yeah, whether it needs to be included in one of the conditions, but that would be something we can do.
Thanks. I'm dying to ask what impact pigeons have on solar panels. I can imagine how they impact it, but Okay. Yeah, I'll park that one for the minute, otherwise we'll digress. Any other questions for Mark? No? Actually, one, if I may. So as has been mentioned, currently this site has got a fair amount of informal parking on it. In other words, there's a few cars already using this site. Reasonable assumption, once you start building, those cars are going to go somewhere else. Russell actually might be more familiar with this than I, but is that not going to cause a bit of a bit more pressure on traffic around the area?
If I may answer it, I mean, the existing parking that we've seen on the demonstration is on the grassed area. And yes, I mean, during the construction period, they won't be able to park there, but it will open up again into informal managed parking rather than the informal on the grass parking that we currently saw.
Effectively, we're replacing like with like.
We're certainly providing replacement parking in the area where the informal parking is.
Right. Russell.
Thank you, Chair. I can see improving the parking once the building's been over and finished. It'll be an improvement in parking, I believe. And also in South Ockenden and probably other areas, a lot of people do park on the grass because there's insufficient parking on the roads. And I would like to see the council take this forward, that we look at where the grass areas are being parked on, where the ground gets destroyed, and especially if it gets wet and muddy, all that gets driven across pavements and onto the road and makes these areas look very, very unsightly. So if at all this could be a lead where we look at where that legal parking takes place on those green areas and perhaps provide more parking for South Ockenden and across the borough, I think the majority of residents would appreciate that.
Thanks, Russell. And you've got the right people in the room to mention that too. But that's handy to know. Obviously, it's handy to get your input on it as the local councillor. So no, that's useful. I hadn't quite understood that in effect what's being taken away will be put back. So that's useful. Excuse me. Any other questions for Mark, or can we let him sit down? No? Well, thanks. In fact, we can let both of you sit down. Thank you very much. So now is your opportunity to ask Nina any questions on the report that she's given. So who's up first? Well, that's the quickest question session I've seen in a while. No questions. Everything crystal clear. Great. Okay, so that moves us on to debate. Who would like to start? If you don't mind my sort of harking back to yourself, Russell, you've already pointed out that there is a shortage of accommodation in this particular ward, so we'll take that as a start point. And we want to expand on or challenge that. We don't get out until we've talked about it. Council agree? Yeah. Aaron, followed by Russell.
Thank you, Chair. As you've previously alluded, there is desperate need for council housing in this borough, and this is a great scheme to be bringing forward for Thurrock people that have been on the waiting list, so I'm all for it.
Thanks, Aaron. Russell?
Thank you, Chair. I had a conversation with a council worker today. He was moved from Keir Hardy House, whilst that's going to be knocked down and developed, but put into a tower block at Chapel St Mary. And he's a family with 2 children. And he said he never believes that his children are ever going to have a garden. Now, the development of these properties here will give people quality housing with gardens. And this is what we've got to aspire to our residents that, from Thurrock, that we will aspire to get them a house with a garden and get them out those tower blocks. So these few properties is a good start.
Thank you. Anybody else? Jackie.
Thank you, Chair. Do you want me to go back to the pigeons?
Do you know, I'm desperate for you two, but not just now. Oh, that was it? Oh, right.
Oh, no, I was going to ask about the viability of doing it, that's all, because I think it's quite a serious matter if it goes wrong.
You've done that, so that's great. That's terrific. Thank you. Russell, please get me out of this.
Do you all remember as kids that programme that was a cartoon was Catch the Pigeon, wasn't it? Dick Dastardly and all that. I think what Jack is referring to is retrofitted solar panels. They sit above the roof, and the pigeons will nest underneath them, and then they will then use that as a nest, and they defecate everywhere. But I believe that these modern solar panels, when they're built into the roofs, they're built in flush with the tiles. So I wouldn't anticipate them making those mistakes with those pigeons.
Thank you. I consider myself educated now. Thank you very much. Right. It looks like we're ready for the vote. So the recommendation is that the Chief Planning Officer be authorised to grant permission for the development subject to those conditions set out in section 16 of the report. So may I have a proposer, Aaron? And a seconder, please. Steve. Thank you. Sorry, I always remember I can't see you if I have to turn around. No. Right, so all those in favour of the recommendation, please. Yeah, I'm not going to bother with against because that looks like it's unanimous. Okay, so the recommendation has been approved. Thank you, folks. And that is our order of business for the day complete. So thank you very much for your time. And I will now close this meeting at just gone 7 o'clock. If I'm right, Tom, I can't claim the record here. You've done a shorter one, haven't you? But I'm up there somewhere. Thank you very much and have a good evening.